I hope that last week you enjoyed the conference dedicated to Jewish-Christian relations, and it was kind of not directly connected with our topic, but nevertheless, you had occasion to see two groups, Jews and Christians, speaking about the possibility to overcome tensions, difficulties, prejudices, which were typical for centuries, and now we are really assisting in completely new atmosphere, new situation, new attitudes. And in a way, it seems to me that we can see also in this attempt to create bridges instead of walls between these two religions as a kind of post-secular mentality. We are reaching in our course the middle. It will be our seventh meeting. And already some of you wrote me that you would like to make a presentation. There are two cases. We will discuss this in class. Perhaps we will start from discussing these two topics for presentations. Both are very good. And one of you decided to write an essay and also already asked me for some bibliography. So I hope that also the rest of you who still think about will decide exactly at the last meeting in November. It will be 26 November that I will already know who and how many of you will make a presentation and how many of you will write a final essay. And the time which we will have for our usual discussion, I would like to introduce a new topic using an article and book which I put on our platform by a not so good, well-known author, but nevertheless, I thought that it is worth it to approach him. His name is Douglas Porpora or Porpora, who is a philosopher interested in secularization, but having toward this phenomenon a critical approach. So I think it will enrich our perspective. So you will have a different perspective, different possibilities to look at secularization and on the new position of religion in public sphere, and so on and so on. And just a short comment on what I send you to the platform. Of course, I don't expect that you will read everything because it's technically impossible. You have not only our class, you have many classes, you have to read, to write, so you are very busy. But nevertheless, I thought that one article which I put on the platform you can read in order to enter in his way of reasoning. And the book is thought as inspiration for those of you who eventually will be inspired by Porpora's thought. So I will start with the article, which is middle, not too long, not too short, 20 pages. I think this is exactly as the academic essay should have, more or less 20 pages, and is entitled Does Secularization Matter? So it's a completely new approach. He's simply asking a question, not saying is it good, is bad, but simply how it shape his way of reading his own religiosity or his own beliefs. And I think that his auto definition is very interesting and very, in a way, American. He himself is a Catholic, but his wife is Jewish. So probably also the fact that half of his family is Jewish influenced his being Catholic, and also the fact that he is a professor of philosophy, that he dedicated his time to analyzing his thoughts, of course, also influenced his way of believing. Perhaps before I enter more into details in Porpora's thought, I have to explain why I escape uh, one unit of our class, which I mentioned at the beginning in the syllabus, namely the post-secularism in the light of discussion in 2004 between Jürgen Habermas and Josef Ratzinger. Usually, I dedicate entire class to this discussion because I thought, I still think that it was quite important event. Habermas introduced as a secular, as an atheist, as a philosopher who never before dealt with religious questions, introduced in his philosophical system, religion, as an important component element of public debate in Germany. And Ratzinger, who is, both, by the way, are still alive, who welcomed critical thinking in his theological thinking. And both thinkers were deeply impressed by terrorist attack, as all of us, on 9/11 in 2001, where we have this violently entering religious discourse into public sphere, so to say. So also being a secular, you have to take into account people with religious worldviews, etc. So, but okay, I mention it, but I nevertheless am saying to you that you can, if some of you will be interested, you can just write me an email or ask me, and I can send you pertinent literature, articles by both Ratzinger and Habermas. But I thought that since we are uh, mostly or mainly interested in what is going on in America, in United States, so instead of discussing thought of these two Germans, I decided to introduce Douglas Porpora. So why him? Well, I discovered him by chance, but nevertheless, he seems to me an interesting person, and particularly his auto-definition, what he's saying about himself, who I am. And so he's saying, I am a kind of liberal Protestant Catholic. It sounds very curious for Polish context, where still Catholicism and Protestantism are clearly separated. But in America, it's possible that you feel that in your way of living, experiencing your Christianity, you are both uh, Catholic and Protestant. and also liberal Protestant Catholic. And this is basically the reason why as he said, I quote, "But because I remain a Catholic in a broad sense, I think religion is of value. I think the monotheistic religions are of value. And I think that Christianity is of value." So you have here an appreciation of religion. You have here a declaration of a person who describes himself as a religious person, but nevertheless is not an arrogant or absolute description of himself, but is like saying that I am ready to discuss, I'm ready to welcome arguments against my faith, uh, but nevertheless, I think that is important to be a believer. So, in this sense, and he in his 20 pages article includes also new atheists whom I mentioned already in our class. So Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, and Daniel Dennett. So these four horses of new atheism. But he's very gently, I would say, discuss with them, saying, well, your arguments I can understand, but they are really not fitting into my way of being a believer, etc., etc. So, this article, which perhaps some of you will read, you will find someone who is critical toward secularism, but in the same time is very proud, sure of his being religious. So is a kind of dialogical attitude toward himself, but also toward others. So you have here an openness, etc. And for those of you who would like to read also his book, and perhaps a final paper could be in form of a review of this book, why not? If you will be interested in someone who is not apologetic, but is religious, but aware of criticism which religion is encountering in the modern United States. So you can read this book, which is older than article. The article was published 2 years ago, 2018, in a very important Journal of Religion and Society. And we can see in this article as a voice in the ongoing discussion, debate. So you can enter in this debate. And the book was published in 2001, so it's quite old, but nevertheless still relevant for the author. And the title is Landscapes of the Soul, The Loss of Moral Meaning in American Life. Landscapes of the Soul. So, in a way, our spiritual life is influencing the landscape, spiritual, intellectual landscape of our modern life. And his point is, and this is of course not the only book which he wrote, is that without religion you are losing your moral attitude or moral values. And I think this is a good point to discuss. Is religion connected with morality? Losing religion means also losing a moral dimension of your life. Is for me is a very controversial thesis, but it's good to enter in dialogue with our author, Douglas Porpora, and to raise your own questions. If you are agnostic or atheist, you can say, well, my sources of my morality are not religious, but nevertheless they are. So this is like introduction for your own reflection, your own readings, critical reading. This is very important. And the last word is that he described himself as a critical realism perspective. So he assumed critical attitudes, but in the same time realistic attitude. What it means, please read and bring your thoughts in our class. So see you soon.